Welcome to Out with Dan, the podcast that spotlights and examines the voices of LGBTQ+ authors, characters, and our allies. Together, we lift our voices and we tell our stories. I'm Dan White. Join me as I chat with this week's author. Hello and welcome back to Out with Dan. Today I'm excited to talk to Anthony Horowitz again. So of all the writers I've interviewed, Anthony is one of my favorites. I don't know if you know that, so now you and the world knows that. I have some favorites. I never have one favorite, but I have some favorites. I enjoy your work and I enjoy our chats together. So welcome back, Anthony.
We are very kind, and I'm sure you have to be a favorite to get called back onto your show twice.
Yes, I agree. So today we're going to talk about A Deadly Episode. It's the latest in the Hawthorne and Horowitz series. And so Anthony and I were talking about alliteration earlier, and I love alliteration, but I often get tongue-tied. So if I stumble over myself during the episode, we'll know why. I haven't been drinking yet, just coffee so far.
I don't know what it is with me and alliterations. Although actually, I never really call this series sort of the Hawthorne-Horowitz series. I actually call it just the Hawthorne books because, I'm only the narrator in it. It's not really about me. I am inside the books, but I'm not there as a sort of a major figure. And I think if Hawthorne had his way, it would just be the Hawthorne mysteries or whatever. So that's how I refer to it.
Well, and I will say that in this particular instance, Horowitz points that out a few times. And I was wondering, so I'll ask you a personal question. Are you tiring of the series, or do you still love it? Or how does that set with you? Because it is probably called the Hawthorne series, not only by you.
It's a great question, Dan. I have been asked it before, and I'm happy to answer it. Certainly, I'm not tiring of it. I'm loving writing it. I love that character. I love the setup. And I think that the mysteries in all 6 books so far have been really engaging and I hope fun to solve and solvable. That's the most important thing for me, where the reader can actually solve the crime at the same time as Hawthorne. I am beginning to think that I'm going to write fewer of them than I originally set out to do. When I started this series, I thought it would be 12, but because of the way it's moving, in this new book, A Deadly Episode, we learn so much more about Hawthorne, about his past, about this secret that lurks somewhere in the north of England that relates to his childhood, and something horrible happened to him there. And because I'm putting in so much more information faster than I'd expected, I reckon I'll probably end up doing 9 rather than 12. This is number 6, Deadly Episode. Number 7, I'm already well into. I have a titleless scenario, and actually quite a bit of it written. Number 8 is going to be just a fun one, and number 9 will be The Truth, and that's going to be quite a dark book.
All right, good.
But you never know. Ask me again in a year's time, it could be or even 15.
That's right. You know what? Once book number 9 comes out and your publisher comes back and says, we got to have number 10, I bet you say, okay, I bet I can eke out 1 more or 10 more. So
well, that is it. I mean, when you create a series and it finds a readership and everybody's enjoying it, it seems almost foolish to stop. I mean, if you think about it, some of the Poirot or whatever, or Rebus, all these big characters in fiction. People get to know them and to like them, and they don't want to stop at 9 or 10 or 15. They want to, keep going for as long as you can do it. And for me, the big thing is that if the mysteries still fall into my head, that's what I always worry about when I start a new book. Is I know that somebody is going to kill somebody else for a reason. That's where I start, a blank page at that little proposition in my head. Somebody has killed somebody else. Why? And it's just trying to think up interesting people and really wacky out there motives that make me happy and excited. And as long as they keep falling into my head, I guess I'll keep writing. Although that said, it might be a different series next. I don't know.
Well, and so I eagerly await whatever you bring me, Anthony. I'll be excited about it. But I do like this series. But the reason I asked the question was because I think even Dame Christie, towards the end of her life, was tiring of Poirot. However, she'd written a lot of them.
But she'd done something like 83 books by the time she finished her life. I think that may not be the exactly correct figure, but it was somewhere around there. And a lot of those are Poirot novels, and of course the Miss Marple books as well. And I think some of the later ones do have a bit of fatigue in them. I mean, I do sense that she is, of course, a genius from start to finish.
Right.
But I think that by the time she got to Curtin and decided she was actually going to do what she did with Poirot in that book, notice I'm not giving any spoilers here. Although, is there a single one of your listeners who doesn't know what happens in that book?
That's
But
right.
nonetheless, I mean, I think there's almost a sense of relief that it had to happen, that this had to be the last one. I don't have that feeling about Hawthorne. When I stop,
No.
I know I'll miss him.
I agree. And I think the readers will as well. So give the audience an overview of what a deadly episode is about.
Robert, it's a very sort of meta thing to describe. When I do describe it, I always find myself being tied into knots, but I'll try and make it simple. The book opens on a film set, and the film that is being made is the first book in the Hawthorne-Horowitz series, which is called, of course, The Word is Murder. And that's being filmed in Hastings on the south coast of England. And it is a production which is having a disastrous time. It's way over budget. The director is pretentious. What's new? The writer hates detective stories and wants to write her own film based on something completely different to what I've written in the book. The two lead actors are at each other's throats. Everybody on the set is miserable for one reason or another. And suddenly, the actor playing Hawthorne is murdered. Hawthorne and I arrive on the set, and Hawthorne's task in this book is effectively to investigate his own murder.
Right. And I love that concept, so you give us a red herring very early on because when the murder is discovered, the person mistakes the actor Hawthorne for the real Hawthorne. And of course, as a reader, I'm like, oh, wait, that's not possible. Because, I did not think this was the last one, but I was like, that can't be possible. But yet at the same time, I'm so obliging with authors that I just assumed that, well, perhaps we were going to learn at the end, this is the end or what have you. And I was like, oh, wow. And I did love that twist. I don't think that's a spoiler because that happens very early in the book.
It's so early on in the book, and I when I first started talking about it, I didn't say who got killed, and I tried to evade it. But I think it is sort of obvious happening. But it might amuse you to know that on a film set, or a movie set, it's an interesting part of, because this is very much my life. I work with my wife Jill Green, and we make movies and TV shows all the time. When you have a film set, the Winnebagos, where the actors hang out between shots, never have the names of the actors on the windows. Did you know that?
The
reason is that if you've got you've got Leonardo DiCaprio, and you don't want to have his name advertised on the side of a Winnebago because everybody's going to stop and knock on the door and want to see him and disturb him. So by tradition, every time you have a film set, you put the name of the character, not the actor, on the door. So on the door of this Winnebago is the word Hawthorne. Somebody opens the door of this Winnebago and sees a figure sitting with their back to the door. What do they assume? So the whole question of the book is, did they mean to kill Hawthorne the detective, or were they after the character of the actor who plays him?
And I will say that I had enough time to go back and reread some earlier parts of the book once I'd finished it. And I love the fact that it is discoverable. Dan did not figure it out. I do sometimes, but I did not. Once again, a book that you give me a complete story, but with clues along the way. I'm just reading, eating, reading, drinking, coffee, whatever. And at the end, I'm like, I can see this clearly now, but I missed a lot of the breadcrumbs along the way.
Well, I love hearing you say that, because I do think it's really important that a writer never cheats on his readers, that everything should be out there in the open, and that it should be possible, not easy, but possible, to solve the crime. When I give out a book to somebody and they read it, the first question is always for me, not did you enjoy it, but did you guess it? And if they did guess it, I'm sort of a little bit annoyed, but at the same time, it's part of their pleasure. So why shouldn't I be pleased? I do one rather naughty thing, though, which is that my American publisher, who is a genius and a real sort of murder mystery nut, he sometimes guesses my books, and he sees it before it comes out, obviously in manuscript form or just on the screen. And I say to him, so Jonathan, how did you guess it? What gave it away? And he'll say, well, it was in chapter 5, that mention of the flower on the table. So then I go back, and I take out the flower on the table and I change chapter 5, but nobody else will get it afterwards.
Well, I like that though. I mean, that's the genius though of what you're bringing to the page, Anthony, is you're looking to entice us, to make us enjoy our journey with you, the writer, and with your characters, but yet at the same time be challenged. Because I know I said to you, I believe on the first episode we did together, that there's one author I wouldn't read. The only thing I want to read about her is her obituary, because she lied to me the entire book. And at the end, the ending was so vastly different. There was never any way to see the ending coming, because she had deceived me all along. And it wasn't an unreliable narrator. It was the author who deceived me.
Well, I have that problem. I have that problem with a TV show called Lost, which I'm sure you remember.
Yes.
For 6 or 7 seasons, I hung in there waiting for the big reveal at the end, which never came because it had never actually been planned. You know, it was a brilliant show. It was fantastic to watch, but it led you nowhere. And I get quite cross. Just I also get cross if the killer is revealed at the end. And I can think of 1 or 2 really big TV shows. You know, I won't mention them because it's not a good look for a writer to knock another writer. J.J. Abrams can take it. He's so huge. He won't mind. But there are 1 or 2 big TV detective murder mysteries where I've looked at it and said, well, hold on a minute. I could not have guessed that. The clues were not there. And so therefore the pleasure of the chase, of standing side by side with the detective and reaching the truth together, or maybe ahead of him or her, that to me is essential to the books. And, you know, added to that, incidentally, there are other things in these books that I think, you know, not just the murders and the machinations and the clues. You know, I'm trying to have a lot of fun with these books. And I notice that as I write them, they're getting a little more sort of, there's a little edge of humor that's creeping in more and more. In this book, I'm very proud of a chapter that takes place at the BAFTA award ceremonies in London. You know, BAFTAs are our version of your Oscars. And something terrible happens to one of the characters who wins an award that night. And that's a chapter which, for me, it was the most fun I had writing the book. And going back to your first question, will I stop? No, because I have more ideas like that. And there are things which will hopefully make readers laugh. Yeah.
So without saying who it is, because I really want everyone to read to find out who it is that, number one, gets hijacked, but there's not only that, but the person that is affected by the hijacking. So do you know her? Have you ever met her?
I have met her, yes, the person who was mentioned in the book. I didn't ask permission to put her in my book, and I hope she won't object to it. We're talking here about a very world-famous actor.
Yes,
but you know, it's all done in the spirit of fun, and you know, I've never tried to hurt anybody in my books. I use people from real life all the time, but only in a positive way, because my books are entertainments, and there's so much in the world at the moment that is so dark and unpleasant. There's so much hatred around, and so much fear, anxiety, misery. My books are out there to sort of give people, you know, a couple of days of just entertainment and relief, not to score points.
That's right. And you do that in masterful spades, Anthony.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. So now the book is set in Hastings, which I knew was on the South Coast. I'm a little more familiar with Bristol. I've not been to either one of them.
Bristol
but I know,
is very different to Hastings.
Yes, and even on pictures, when Bristol's I look online.
And it's much more, it's more upmarket. It's a slightly more upmarket place. It's got the wonderful Royal Pavilion. It's got Brighton Pier is amazing, I think, and the beaches there are fantastic. I haven't been there for a long time. And now I'm saying, even as I speak, I'm wondering, does Brighton actually have a pier? I'm sure it does. But anyway, Hastings I chose partly because it was where we shot Foyle's War. You know, my big TV series, it took 16 years of my life, was all set in Hastings, and we were filming down there. In fact, the book, A Deadly Episode, opens on a beach, a place called the Stard, which is sort of just next to the town of Hastings. And we actually did shoot some of the Foyle's episodes right there on that spot.
Oh, nice.
So when I was down there doing my research, it was a bit of a trip down memory lane. It was lovely. I even went up and visited Foyle's house where he used to live, and some of the other locations where we shot, and it was great to come back to that place. And I chose it on purpose. The book is set in Deal, in fact. If you go back to the book, the word is murder, which is being shot. It's being filmed in Deal, which is way over to the east. It's in Kent, also on the coast. I have a love, incidentally, of British seaside towns. There's a sort of a shabbiness about them, an eccentricity, a sort of a faded quality, but they're full of life and vitality, fascinating, interesting people. Hastings in particular, it's just such sort of, everybody you meet there is sort of in a way eccentric and larger than life, and having a good life as well. So Hastings in the book is very much a character.
So have you stayed at the Queen Victoria Hotel?
I did indeed stay in the Queen Victoria. I described my room. It's the room I stay in. It's in the book, and that I mentioned that Queen Victoria, before she became queen, went and visited that hotel. And only this morning I was looking on my phone and I was seeing her signature in the guest book to sign in when she came there. That's when they changed the name of the hotel to, when she became queen, they named it after her. And it is a Victorian palace. It's a little bit seedy now, a little bit sort of faded like everywhere else. But it's what, read the book. It's exactly how I describe it.
Well, it's at least 150 years old or older. So I mean,
Yeah.
I think after a while we all get a little shabby with age.
Don't tell me.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're looking fabulous. I look very gray-haired today. That won't look the same tomorrow. Of that, I can promise
I'm
you.
wearing a hat, so you can't see how grey or thin or hopeless my hair is.
So is this the first of these books that your wife's been named, or has she been named?
Oh no, she's turned up in 2 or 3 of the books.
Okay,
in all of them. In fact, Jill has made an appearance. Jill is a very important part of my life because we worked together. We made Foyle's War together. We made Magpie Murders, Moonflower Murders, and coming up very soon, Marble Hall Murders together. Some more alliterations for you, as I know you like them.
Yes.
And we're hoping that we're going to do the Hawthorne series on TV. I've written a script of it, and she's out there. But it's a don't get excited. It's a difficult time. There's no money around in TV. There's a very long line of big people trying to get their shows made ahead of us, and it's the most difficult atmosphere I've ever known. However, the script is written, and we have some casting ideas, and we are hoping that maybe next year we'll make it. I don't know. But anyway, Jill is definitely in mentioned in a Deadly Episode. And I should say that in the next book, there's a whole chapter in which she is the star.
Oh, lovely. I love that.
Lovely won't be the word you use when you
well, I mean, I don't hurt your wife now.
I wouldn't dream of it, but it's
I didn't think
one of those,
so.
It's a little bit like my BAFTA chapter. It's one of those sort of set pieces that I hope people won't forget. I'm actually about 4 or 5 chapters away from writing it because I'm writing this new book at the moment. And I'm just trying to get these chapters done so I can get to the chapter with Jill.
Oh, I know that must be fun. So is she a big critic or champion, your real life wife?
Jill is amazing. I mean, she's the only person I know who works harder than me. She is a brilliant critic. She is absolutely lethal. She can be quite hard-edged and sort of, it can be quite sometimes, really, I mean, it's as bad as that. But she's always right. She always has, and what's great about her is she doesn't just tell me what's not working. She gives me ideas for how to make it work. She knows. She looks at all my scripts for TV, obviously, because I work for her. Jill is the producer on my TV shows, so she effectively hires me, and I know my place. Although I do argue with her. I mean, when I was doing Magpie Murders, we argued over the scripts, and in the end, I did it her way, and of course, it was right. If only I'd done it to start with, I could have saved myself 9 months' work. But there you are. That's marriage.
A lot of heartburn. You'd have saved a lot of heartburn.
That's right.
So, of the secondary characters in this book, do you have a favorite?
I like all of them, to be honest with you. I like the screenwriter. Is it her name Shanika Harris? Is that her name? I can never remember the name.
Yes, Shanika.
I like her because she's so off the wall. I mean, she's trying to turn a murder mystery story into something about sort of eco warfare and save the planet. And I just love the idea that she stamps up. She even has the gall to say to Hawthorne she doesn't like detective stories, which doesn't play very well with him. But also I like David Caine because he's the star who plays Hawthorne. And I've met people like him. Nobody in the book is based on a single person I have met filming.
Okay.
But I have met a lot of people in filming, and bits of a lot of them are in this book. So those are my 2 favorites, I think. And they've actually had a relationship. We learn later in the book that they've had a relationship at some time. And boy, would I have liked to have been a fly on the wall at breakfast.
That's true. We also know that David Caine, he sort of gets around a little bit as well.
Well, David Caine is just an interesting character all round. I mean, he is. This is the big thing about writing these books is that if I, sometimes I read murder mystery and I think to myself, I just want to know more about these characters. It's all right, but this person is a suspect, and that one turns out to be the killer, and the third one turns out to be the victim, and a fourth one turns out to be, somehow related in some strange way. But I want to know these people as people. I want to feel that I've actually been with people I understand and relate to. And so when I'm writing these books, it's something I do try very hard to do, which is to get all sorts of different people. When I wrote the number 5 Hawthorne book, Close to Death, which was set in a residential private close in Richmond, the first job I had was, well, look, hold on a minute. There are 8 or 9 houses in this private close. So that means 8 or 9 families or single people or couples of one sort or another. Who are these people going to be? What sort of people will be interesting to write about? They've got to be also a little bit heightened because they're going to be involved in a murder story. And in murder stories, look at Agatha Christie. Agatha Christie kept going back to actors and actresses or bishops or secretaries, writers, and she'd love to have a retired major somewhere in there, a retired soldier and all the rest of it. It was a sort of a very sort of once they gathered together in the last chapter of the library, they were somehow very, for the solution. They were somehow very recognizable, and that was part of the fun. So I'm looking for people who aren't just, shall we say, I don't know, the plumber, the electrician, the sort of the guy sweeping the street. Not that there's any reason not to have those people in the books, but because I think they should have a certain sort of elevated quality. In my new book, incidentally, one of the fun parts of it is that the people are very straight, street type people, which I'm really looking forward to writing about people who sort of live on their wits and who live not in sort of ivory towers.
Well, and I like both concepts as a reader, but I also think I agree with you on the sort of the elevated level. There's something about that. There's a familiarity when they're on the same level. If you've got somebody who is street with someone who's elevated, their lives don't really intersect as much as they would with neighbors also, close.
It's a very interesting conversation because we're talking about here the sociology, if you like, of murder mystery. And the truth of the matter is that the sort of person who would sit down and work out a clever way to kill somebody that they dislike or have a reason to see dead is not going to be a very ordinary person. And the people that they know are probably not going to be that ordinary. I'm trying to avoid the suggestion that being ordinary is in some way insulting. I think I'm an ordinary person. But at the same time, because I'm a writer, that puts me in a slightly sort of elevated niche, if you like. A niche, that's what I'm looking for.
All right.
So what I'm looking for in these books, and what I found, for example, in Close to Death, where we had one character was an NHS doctor, but one was a dentist, but he was a dentist to the stars. And I like that little twist to it. He wasn't just an ordinary dentist. He was a dentist who I think had met Ewan McGregor and was very excited to have his photograph in the office. There was a chess master in there, which was a sort of a very interesting and sort of, that's not somebody who is, that's extraordinary and different, but at the same time, he was a very human character. And the 2 lovely old ladies in there who owned a cozy crime bookshop, but never had anything with swear words in it or too much blood. So that's what you're looking for, is you're trying to take people and give them a twist and make them memorable and put them into a niche. And that is what powers these books. And it's also true of the set. The director on this had to be more than just a director. So he's a slightly pretentious director, and he's a director with his own little secret, of course, that gets revealed halfway through, and so on. It's just taking people. I think that's the most fun I have writing these books, is actually coming up with the characters.
Well, and I have fun reading them very much. So,
well, thank you.
You have one thing in your book that I know what the word is, but I don't think a lot of people will, and that's a funcular, because we have one in Los Angeles. We used to have 3 or 4, but I gather there's a funcular in Hastings, or I know that because I saw a picture of it. So will you explain to the audience what a funcular is?
Yeah, there is one in Hastings. In fact, there might even be 2. There's definitely one in the east of Hastings, and what it is, built by the Victorians, it took you from the beach low down to the top of the cliff high up, and it did it pretty vertically. So it's like a train that goes not completely vertically, it's still diagonal, but at a very, very steep angle. So it looks a little bit like it's a cross between a tram and a ski lift. It's, if you can imagine the two sort of knocked together on rails that go all the way up to the top. And it's the sort of thing you would really, I'm surprised Agatha Christie didn't use it in one of her books. Maybe actually she did. But if you think about it, I did write one of her books set on an island, and it had this extraordinary machine to get you over. It was called, I think it was Evil Under the Sun. I did it for David Suchet when he was playing Poirot. And there was this machine that took you across the sand and then through the water. Not very deep water, to this island, because the only way you could get there in high tide. And this machine was, if you can imagine, it was like a car, but it was a car that was 10 feet above the ground on one sort of legs and then wheels underneath. And I actually rode on that to get to the island. And I love, again, we're talking about sort of putting people in a niche, but so can objects and places be. You don't want to just describe an ordinary house or or just a sort of a straightforward hotel. It's always going to be like Bertram's Hotel. It's got to be a special hotel, and it's got to be sort of have a fun quality injected too.
Well, and I did love it because we do have a funcular here in LA. It's downtown, and it goes up 2 streets. From the bottom street up 2 streets to the top, and it's really a cool thing.
I haven't seen it. I've always wondered where it goes.
Yep, it just goes. It goes up to a plaza of an office tower.
Oh, wonderful!
Yeah,
I should write it the next time I come.
Perfect. I love it. So if you invite me, I'll go with you.
Of course, we need to work out. Somebody gets in at the bottom, they're dead at the top. That's the sort of story.
There you go. I don't want it to be either one of us, but we can find someone to drag along.
Let's get in, Dan. One of us comes out.
That's right. So the book is called A Deadly Affair. It's by Anthony Horowitz, and as with every book by Anthony Horowitz, it's so delicious and it is a must-read. Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of Out with Dan. You can find more information about this podcast and its host at OutWithDan.com, on Twitter at OutWithDan, and on Instagram and Facebook at GoOutWithDan. This podcast is hosted by Authors on the Air Global Radio Network, and the theme music is provided by bensound.com. Join us again soon for the next episode of Out with Dan.